Welcome to the Soul Podcasting Podcast, where we explore purpose-driven podcasting for coaches, creatives, and leaders who want to make an impact through their message. And I'm your host, Demetria Zinga, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're diving into a conversation that's going to challenge the way you think about marketing, messaging, and audience connection. A little bit about me. I'm a creative strategist and podcast coach and the founder of Soul Podcasting. And for more than 20 years, I've helped entrepreneurs and leaders use storytelling and digital media to build trust, strengthen their brands, and amplify their voice. So this work is super personal to me, and I'm going to tell you a bit more about why in just a moment. But first, I want to ask you a question. So let's think about the fact that as a podcaster, you probably have a topic in mind already and you're ready to get started. It's been sitting in your head for a couple of weeks, maybe a bit longer, and you know you want to either start this podcast or launch your next topic for next week, right? And you've already started one. You're second guessing yourself though at this point. And then one day you open your Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you type in your idea and voila, there they are. All of these different podcasts that are about the exact same topic that you were going to talk about. So maybe there's 10, 20, 47 different podcasts on your exact topic already. And just like that, the air goes out of the room, you feel deflated, and you think, okay, it's already been done. What more could I possibly add to the table? Why would anyone choose me and my episode when there's already established voices out there doing the exact same thing? So if that's you, I want you to stay right here because today's episode is specifically for that moment. It's about that deflating, self-doubting moment. But here's what I know to be true after more than 2 decades of helping people tell their stories and build their brands. The problem isn't your topic. The problem is that you haven't found your angle, and those are not the same thing. So by the end of this episode, you're going to have 3 questions, very simple questions to help you uncover what makes your voice not just different, but necessary. And we're going to do this together in under 20 minutes, maybe even under 10. I'm not sure how long this will run, but we'll see how quickly we're able to figure this out together. So I invite you to settle in and grab your journal if you have one nearby, and let's go. So my friend, I do have something to share with you really quick because I believe that everything I teach about podcasting is rooted in something deeply human. And this week, something deeply human has happened in my household. My daughter graduated from high school. I know. Our family's been on cloud 9. We're so excited for her. And it's one of those moments when you're sitting in those bleachers, or in our case, in a folding chair outside of an auditorium, and you're watching your kid walk across that stage. Time does this strange, beautiful thing where it collapses and you see the little girl that she was and now the young woman she's becoming all at one time. And so my husband and I are incredibly proud of our daughter. And I've been sitting on that feeling all week long, just that fullness and sense of, hey, we showed up, we did the work, and this is the moment that marks it. And that just led me to even more introspection about what it means to grow, to mature, to watch your process over the course of 10, 20 years. And I'm thinking right now about this community and what milestones actually teach us. That there's no generic version of a graduation because nobody graduates for someone else. Every single person on that stage had their own path, their own story, obstacles, reasons for being there, and for how they got there. And so that's exactly how I want you to think about your podcast. There's no generic version of your voice, of your own voice. Nobody can show up and say what you say the way you say it. The question isn't whether the topic has already been covered. The question is, have you covered it? Has your specific perspective, your particular journey, your unique lens, has that been on a microphone yet? 9 times out of 10, it hasn't. So let's change that. And there's this myth that we're going to uncover, and it's the idea that a topic can be taken. Topics are just containers. Personal finance is a container. Mindset is a container. Entrepreneurship, parenting. These are all enormous containers. They're broad categories of the human experience. And no one person or no one podcast or brand owns these containers. So what is yours? Exclusively yours is your perspective on that topic. Your perspective is the combination of who you are, what you've lived over the years, and who you serve right now, what you believe in, and how you see the world. It's your framework. And I promise you, no one else has that exact combination because it's just not possible. You are unique and you bring something very extra and special to the table. So here's an example. Let's say there are hundreds of podcasts about health and wellness, and there are, but there's a difference between a podcast about wellness hosted by a 50-year-old Black woman navigating perimenopause and entrepreneurship, or just a generic wellness show. Same container, completely different perspective. So whoever's hosting that show is going to bring their own sense of belonging to the topic. And also there will be a completely different audience and a completely different impact. The topic is what you talk about, but your perspective is why it matters to you and to the specific people that you're called to serve. So once you separate those two things in your mind, the whole game changes. So let's do the work. These are the 3 questions and let's find your angle. Okay, so I want you to treat this next section like a mini workshop. And if you can, I want you to write while you listen. You don't have to. Of course, if you're driving, just let the questions land. You can come back to them later, but don't rush through this. Give yourself the space to actually think through this. So my first question for you is, who do you call when you're excited about this? Think about your topic, whatever it is you feel called to podcast about, and then think, when something exciting happens in that space, who's the first person you want to tell? Who do you light up around when this subject comes up? And it's probably not everyone. It might be a specific friend who gets it, or maybe a client who's been asking you about this for many years, or just a version of yourself from 5 years ago who was desperate for this information and couldn't find it anywhere. I want you to think about who is that ideal person that you would want to share this with. Of course, if you don't have that ideal person, you could potentially think of who you would want that ideal person to be, but really just picture that person, whether real or imagined, and get specific. How old are they? What are they dealing with right now? What keeps them up at night around that topic? And that is your ideal audience. So you don't want to say something like women 25 to 54, because that's just a demographic. So I'm talking about a real human being whose life changes because your podcast exists. Your podcast doesn't need 1 million listeners to be successful. Literally, it just needs the right listeners. And the clearest way to find them is to start with the one person you already know that you're talking to and write down, who is my person? Describe them as specifically as you can. So that's your first thing to do. And your second question you're going to ask yourself is, what do you notice that others in this same space seem to skip or they might get wrong? And this is where your differentiator lives. It's your point of difference. I love this question because it almost always makes people sit up just a little bit straighter. I want you to think about your topic and think about how it's typically discussed. The podcasts that exist right now, the books that have been written already about your topic, the advice that gets recycled over and over again. I want you to ask yourself, what's missing from that? What makes you frustrated? What do you hear people say and think that's not the whole story? What's the thing that's never said, that nuance that gets glossed over? Things that make you feel like, okay, this is super shallow and I could add more flavor to this. That's the frustration that you're noticing that can become your angle. The things that bother you in a space are almost always the things that your audience is also noticing but can't articulate. You become the voice that finally says the thing that they've been feeling. So I want you to write that down, right? And ask yourself, what's missing from the conversation in my space? And what do I see that others seem to skip? The third question is, why does this matter to you? What's the personal thread? This is the most important question, and it's the one people skip because it does feel vulnerable. So you want to ask yourself, why this particular topic? The answer is never because I'm an expert, because essentially that is your credential, but it's not your story. What I mean is that, what is the experience that you've lived through that has pulled you to this place? What did you go through? What did you witness, survive, discover that made your topic not just interesting to you, but necessary, something that you have to share with your audience because it ties in with what you're sharing with them. So you're going to go back and think about those moments, that relationship you had, that struggle that you had at work, or some season of your life that really connects your topic with your audience. And it has to be a personal thread that you believe brings everything together. Because at the end of the day, it's what turns a topic into a calling. It's what makes listeners feel like you're not just informing them, but that you're with them and you understand them. There's a difference between a podcast that teaches and a podcast that transforms. And this is what I try to do on my episodes to the best of my ability. I try to bring that personalization into my topics because I know that you can't really get with me on a topic like podcasting or some tech related show if I don't show up with soul, if I don't share my own personal experiences about what I'm going through in podcasting. So I can't just show up with the technicalities of how to create a podcast and what to do. And here are the steps without showing up, allowing you to get a glimpse into my world, right? Because that's what ties it together so that you see my story, you see why I love podcasting, you see why I keep showing up for it and why I'm willing to help you with your podcast. And that brings everything together. At least in my opinion, I think this is just the best way to show up, to be yourself, to be authentic, but to share your story in a really personal way. And when you have a story that you can align with, that you want your audience to share with you, it doesn't have to be a dramatic origin story. It could be something as simple as, hey, I spent 5 years searching for a community that understood what I was going through and I couldn't find it. So I'm building it. Something like that. It's your personal thread. It's your reason. It's what makes someone subscribe to your show and keep coming back over and over again. So I want you to write down, if you can, why does this matter to me personally? And what's the thread that connects my life to this message? I promise you, when you do this soulful work of figuring out what you're trying to bring to the table and why it matters to you so much, and you actually write these things down, it makes a huge difference in how you show up. It's like night and day when someone listens to your episodes. They can feel your commitment, they can feel your excitement, and they're actually connecting with you, the person, and not just the topic. So let's kind of bring it all together. Let's say you've answered these 3 questions and you've done the work. So let's make it concrete. You're going to take your 3 answers and plug them into this framework. I'm going to create the framework for you. It's a simple sentence or 2, and you can write this down, but of course, this is also going to be in the transcript, so you can see it there on YouTube if you just want to copy this part of it. But I made it very simple, and it is the following. I talk to fill in your person, your audience, about fill in your topic through the lens of fill in your perspective. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of what that sounds like in practice. So let's say you are someone who talks about wealth and finances. You might say, I talk to first generation entrepreneurs about building wealth through the lens of someone who had to unlearn every money story she inherited. Do you notice what that sentence does for you? It names a specific person, it names a topic, and it immediately tells you something about the host's story and worldview. It signals that this is not a generic podcast and that this is for a specific person from a specific perspective with a specific reason behind it. So I'm saying specific emphatically because I don't want you to be generic and broad when it comes to your content. I want you to get specific. So that sentence that we just created, very simple, but it is the foundation of your podcast. You've got a title, you've got a description, you're going to have episode ideas. You're going to have guest choices. They are all going to flow from that one clear statement, which I kind of deem as a mission statement. So write yours down. It doesn't have to be perfect today, but it has to be honest. Write down what you have today, work on it, and shape it with time because it may change. Be okay with letting it go to re-evolve itself into something different over the years. It may not stay the same, and that's okay. So don't hold on to it too tightly, but do write it down so you have something concrete that you can come back to week after week, month after month when you record your shows. You know who you talk to, you know what you're talking about, and you know what your lens or your perspective is. And before I let you go, I want to leave you with this, that you don't need the perfect angle before you hit record. You do need an angle, but it doesn't need to be perfect, and you need a clear enough angle to make just episode 1. And if you're already on episode 49 and you don't feel clear about this angle statement that we've created today, go ahead and create yours so that from episode 50 and onward, you feel very clear. Because clarity is not a destination that you arrive at before you start. It's something that develops through the act of starting and iterating and reiterating. So every episode you record is going to teach you something about your voice and your audience and your message. It's never a state of perfection, okay? Like podcasting is something that you are going to grow with episode after episode, month after month, year after year. The angle sharpens as you go. And what I know is that people who wait for perfect clarity never start. I do offer clarity coaching, but I don't want you to wait for that. I want you to get started. I do want you to be clear before you start, but I also don't want you to feel like you're in a catch-22 that you're never perfectly clear before you start. And I know that sounds a bit like I'm canceling out what I just said last. Like I'm saying start, but be clear, but you don't have to be clear, but start. But at the end of the day, what I mean is that I want you to get started with some sense of clarity, with some sense of purpose. And if you can just start with this angle statement, it's going to help you a lot. The people who start with clear enough, they're the ones who are still podcasting 2, 3, 5 years later with a community and impact and a voice that is just theirs. So your voice matters and your story matters. The fact that someone else is already in the space is not a stop sign. It's proof that people are hungry for this conversation. And the only question left is whether they'll get to hear it from you. And I think they should. So if today's conversation stirred something in you and you're ready to get clear and focused and actually move forward, I want to invite you to something, because I am offering a mini podcast audit, and it's designed for exactly this moment in your journey. And the way it works is I personally listen to your podcast from start to finish, every second and every moment of your episode. And I do this from a coach's perspective, not just a listener's. I'm going to give you honest, thoughtful feedback on the things that actually move the needle. So that's your intro and outro, your editing flow, your content length, and your overall listener engagement. You're going to get back a concise voice note or a video from me, not just a 20-page report and not an overwhelming spreadsheet, just clear, specific, actionable suggestions you can start implementing right away. It does come with a report, of course, but you're also going to get that video note from me. And it's not a full production overhaul. It's focused, an extra set of ears to help you tighten your sound or strengthen your delivery and help you to create that experience that your listeners actually want to come back to without all the overwhelm. So if you think that's for you, I would love for you to head to the show notes. The link is right there, and I'd love to get into your episodes and tell you what I hear. So thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I can't wait to come back in the next one and share more with you about how to improve your podcasting and how to be motivated for the topics that are in your heart so that you can podcast with soul. And until next time, happy podcasting.